Hey all, Nuie here, and I'm on my Pally Prog by the name of Killithad, if you know that name, or you've been Disturbed, or even actually probably all of old NA probably knows my character name. But yeah, this is gonna be a video. It's just gonna be a basic rundown of the new Paladin because we saw a very dynamic class change, I'll say, as soon as the 8.1 patch hit. Now, I want to make everyone aware that this is not a pimp my build or anything like that. I really don't particularly like that particular thing because one, people kind of put out shit builds sometimes, and two, um, I feel like it takes away from the ability to make diverse builds if everybody's running the same kind of build. So this won't be a build like that. This is just going to be a rundown of what's changed on the Pally class from my viewpoint. I've played Pally since I first started Allods. It was not my first character, but few people know my first character, and actually I'm pretty sure no one knows my first character. So I'm not, but it was the class that I started maining and I really got into the endgame with, and I main tanked for a long period of time. Um, when I was starting, Nethin and Technoone were really key in helping me learn the Pally class, so now I feel like I have a strong understanding of it. So I'm just gonna get into the rundown. The first change I noticed when I hopped on is that the changes to pledges. Um, Now in the 7.0 patch, 7.1 patch, pledges were activated individually, um, so you could use one and then save the other and then use the other whenever you needed the cannons. But in this patch, they've changed it where they are actually shared the same cooldown. So if you trigger one, it's going to trigger the other one automatically. So you only need to run one of them on your layout bar down here. Like this is useful because it still lets you get all your cannons, but it also lets you not have to press quite as much to be able to get and be more focused on your rotation instead of just having to refresh your cannons. The thing I did notice about this is that you need to be aware of their actual cooldowns. Like if you're running the two rubies, the this ruby, which changes the amount of stacks you get and increases the duration of purity, and then this ruby, which changes the amount of or changes the duration of holy rubies. You need to be aware of when you pop those because if one is still on cooldown when you pop it, then it will just extend the cooldown duration. It won't actually use the ability. So be aware of that. Other changes for the first couple abilities is that seal and retribution now gives you cannon of light and cannon of purity, um, like after each other. So seal of righteousness, if you hit that, will give you cannon of purity. Seal of retribution will give you a cannon of light. This is the same for vindication and seal of vulnerability. They just both will do the same thing. They just have a damage increase from the two of them. Hallmark no longer has to be used in tank spec, but it does use one cannon of purity and one cannon of light. From what I've noticed, it hits pretty hard, especially if you're running holy damage off of this or physical damage, or both the rubies to be honest. Then it hits very very hard, but it does have a pretty decent cooldown, and it can be reduced with swiftness from what I've seen, but all your abilities can still be reduced with swiftness, so I definitely would advise still running swiftness on Pally as well as some holy damage to boost yourself. Strike of Justice didn't really see much of a change except that instead it all now brings out the Vanguard effect, which reduces all incoming damage by 50%. So that's really useful. It means you are less likely to get blown up when you're going in. It is 6 seconds, so that is quite a bit of time to be able to get rotations off or get anything off. Um, so that's a nice change for us. Overcome is pretty much the exact same. Shield Slam is pretty much the exact same, though I never really used Shield Slam in any builds I had, so I can't entirely say. Incineration saw a little bit of change because there's quite a few more rubies to buff its damage now. Especially in the second grid here, you can not only you can also you can basically extend the duration of it with this ruby and it also increases the damage it does, and you can also extend the duration here. And you're still the Ruby auto def where when you want to change it to holy damage. Um, Going through tank aspect is pretty much the same. Holy Grounds is another big change. Holy Grounds, I've seen does a ton of damage, but it has a huge cannon cost. So I can't really recommend using it in a DPS build or anything like that because it just takes too long to get to. But I can recommend using. Well, not that it takes too long to get to. It's just that when you're in a DPS build, you're gonna be using things like Hallmark and Incineration, which you won't be using in a tank spec. Well, those will both cost your cannons, so you won't really see the chance to get to 3 cannons of both of those. So I can't really recommend using it, even though it does a large amount of damage. But in tank spec, it's great. It does really good damage. It gives you good aggro. It's easy to get to your cannons. Since you're not really using anything for cannons except for like your shields and stuff, so it's very easy to get to, and especially if you run these rubies, which reduce the cooldown on it and increase the damage of it, and also will increase the aggro gain. So I like that build. I like this ability in tank spec. I don't particularly like it in DPS spec. Raids of Light changed a little bit, where and now it says that in the aspect of defense, all enemies within range will get the conviction effect. Conviction is pretty much the same. It just increases aggro. I don't think this is really a change. This just physically shows you the description. I guess they just updated the description, and that's nice because it lets you really read it without having to constantly switch back and forth between the Ruby page. Other than that, Shining Sword didn't really get a change, or Blinding Blow, I should say, didn't really get much of a change. Death Sentence didn't get a huge change. It's still pretty much the same. Condemnation does seem to do quite a bit more damage now, so I definitely would like it. Also, you need to run Condemnation, like you actually have to run the Ruby now, or the talent, in order to take full effect of Interdiction's ability, which is when Rage Light fades, it spreads Condemnation. So I could definitely say you want to get this to rank 3 in a both DPS or tank spec, because you want to be able to get that spread, so it pulls, especially in tank spec, it pulls aggro. In DPS spec, it just adds the damage for your AoE. Defensive screen's pretty much the same. Heavy Shackle's pretty much the same. Veil of Light's pretty much the same, and your 2 Dragon Tier skills are pretty much the exact same. So that's pretty much it for the talents. Moving on to the Ruby Grid. The Ruby Grid itself, completely different. It almost feels like they exclusively have made it so that certain pages are specifically for tank, and certain abilities are specifically for DPS. Like, this was the same in the last 7.0 patch, but it's even more so now, where it's actually tedious to get to certain rubies in DPS spec that were still available in the last patch. Like, this extra shield bearer, they completely changed it where you can't even get it on your DPS spec anymore. So that kind of blows. But I mean, considering all the damage reduction they've given for DPS spec in terms of PvP, it's not too bad, but it would have been nice to still have the extra bearer. Other than that, there's not a huge amount of overall changes, but I'm going to go through the actual few changes that I've noticed. This is one of them. It's the Inquisitor's Hallmark. It grants the Executioner's Right effects, which increases damage of Hallmark Entangling Chains. This is what really makes Entangling Chains hit like a truck. Like, if you get like max stacks of this and then hit somebody with Entangling Chains or Hallmark, you're gonna chunk them. Like, I've even, like, my blue gear on this character, I've hit people for over 1 mil, over 5 mil, over 3 mil. It hits hard, okay? It just hits hard, but it's the cooldown that's really the problem with being able to consistently spam that. The other one is Ardent Blade, that boosts the duration and damage of Incineration. The max stacks of it is 20, so getting it to 20 stacks is pretty much the same as when you're running Holy Rage and last stage, and then you would get that to 10 stacks, and then you would hit. It's pretty much the same thing where you want to get that to max stacks before you use Incineration. The other changes I've seen in this first grid is First Blood, which gives you the Ardent Blade effect when you come into battle and gives you 5 stacks. I definitely recommend running this in DPS. I don't really see the point in tank. And then the other change that I've noticed here is the Holy Rage. Holy Rage is no longer an actual ability. It just procs off of your Rage of Light. So running Swiftness will let you use Rage of Light more, which means you get to use Holy Rage more. And just increases your damage by a total of about 30% if you're running it with rubies. It's all your damage dealt, not just your holy damage or specifically physical damage. So it's all of your damage. So it's a very nice ruby, and it'll really allow you to boost your DPS output. Looking into the next grid, the only real changes I saw were this ruby, Commitment to Fire, which again, like I previously stated, it increases the damage of Incineration as well as Condemnation when they end. They do more holy damage at the end, so I really like these rubies for DPS spec. Again, I just don't see the use of them in tank spec because your focus is not really doing large amounts of damage. It's more holding aggro and being focused on that. I can still recommend running Rage of Light rubies because Rage of Light with tank spec is a really good aggro generator, so I could still running that, but I don't see yourself trailing over to Commitment to Fire. But if you have the rubies for it, I wouldn't say it's bad. Also, Tough Armor got a change where it reduces the amount of damage you take by 75% and heals you by 10% of your lost health every second for 6 seconds. So basically you get 60% of your health back and you take 75% reduced damage. The only downside is that it increases the cooldown of Overcome by 500%. So it's a really nice skill, and it can really save your ass in PvP, but you know, the drawbacks of it is pretty long. So if you get yourself into a sticky situation, it can save you, and it can help you wait for a healer to get there to help you out, or your team to get there to help you out, or it pretty much will just delay your death. So it's nice. I like the ability. There's nothing else super changed on this grid. They did buff the damage. This actually is crazy for Holy Ground because it increases Holy Ground damage by 100% if you're running all 3 rubies. So that's pretty insane. But again, I don't know if I would recommend running Holy Ground in DPS spec. I'm hopping into the last grid. The first thing I saw was Reinforced Vanguard. The Vanguard, it increases the effects of Vanguard for 4 more seconds, so in total you'll get 10 seconds of reduced damage, so that's nice. The only other real ruby change I saw here was, where was it? This run, right here. Public Trial, I get it does, I'm pretty sure you still need this ruby, even though Rage Light says it does it now. I'm pretty sure you still need that ruby too. So I'm pretty sure you still need to run this ruby, even though it does say that Rage of Light will apply it. I would definitely say running this as well, because when your Rage of Light fades, your Condemnation will go off. So it'll pull Conviction onto all your targets. So I definitely would advise running that ruby for attack spec. But that's pretty much all. Looking at the new Paladin class, I'm really interested in getting down into my Paladin and figure out some builds that I really like. So you guys be sure to leave your thoughts on new Paladin, what you guys think, or what you guys seen in the comments below. But I'm gonna head out here. I'm gonna get into some games, and I'll catch you all later. Hope you enjoyed this first look at the 8.1 Paladin, and I hope to see you all soon. Heaven sent my residence, it's every day just visiting, blending.